Hello, I am the librarian, and with me is Lavande, which means that we are here to cook. Now, as the person who does the cooking in the castle, if I get a craving, well, it will be fulfilled. And today, what I am craving is simply fresh bread. Now, bread is a very easy thing to make. The problem is the waiting. Now, if you were making a flatbread, it would go a lot faster, but I am making a yeast bread, which means there are various risings to have to wait through. But we will get through it together. All right, Lavande, you can sit over there. Now, for your basic bread, like the most basic bread, all you need is flour, salt, and water. But I am doing a yeast bread, so I also need yeast and some sugar to feed the yeast. And this is an enriched bread, which means there's more stuff in it. So in this case, a bit of melted butter and some milk. So I'm going to start this off. Well, I'm first going to... All my things are in the way, all right. We're having a couple of cameras, all right. So there's my bowl. I'm going to add the water. Milk. So that's 1 cup of water, half a cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, 1 tablespoon of sugar. I'm going to give that a little mix. Now you want this mixture to be warm, not hot and not cold. Usually the way I deal with that is I will use, hot water, cold milk. It evens it out. And then 1 tablespoon of yeast. I'm not 100% certain what that is in packets since I just have a little jar. Now we have the first wait while we wait for the yeast to prove. That is for it to bloom and prove that it's alive. So I will need to leave this for, between 5 and 15 minutes, depending on how fresh your yeast is. This will probably take at least 10 because I've had my little packet of yeast for a while. So I'm going to step away for a little while and wait for that to happen, do some cleanups, and I will leave the camera on this because watching the yeast bloom is actually quite fascinating. But I won't make you wait for the whole thing. We'll do a little editing. I'm back in a moment. I'm back. Now that my yeast is all foamy, I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt, which will stop the yeast from continuing to rise. Give that another stir. And now we're going to start adding the flour. With this recipe, you can use either white flour or whole wheat. I like to use a bit of both. So I like to start off with a cup of wheat flour. Is this the correct way to measure it out? Probably not, but since bread making is... the flour measurements aren't always exact. Just due to... the recipe itself says 3.5 to 4 cups of flour, but I have done anything from 3 3/4 to almost 4.5 cups. It just depends on the humidity of your kitchen and possibly moon phases, for all I know. But I like to have a bit of wheat flour in there. It adds a little flavor, it adds a little texture. Might end up using more depending on how much white flour I've got left. Anyway, so there's cup number 2. I'll probably do this all at once. I like to do it, at a time. All right, here's 3. I think I'll actually use my wheat flour again for the half because I'm running low on my all-purpose white. And yeah, I'm just estimating this because I know that it doesn't really matter, because I'm going to be adjusting this for texture, which doesn't really show very well on film, but that was interesting. But we're just going to have to take my word for it. So I'm going to set that aside. All right, now we're at the point where I can't just stir this in. I'm going to have to start getting in with my hands, which are nice and clean. And I trimmed my nails recently, so they shouldn't get too gummed up. But now we have to start getting into this and kneading. So we want to get all the flour incorporated. And I personally tend to just knead in the bowl. Right now it's just... once you get it... as you can see, right now it's very sticky, and we don't want that. So we want to try to get the rest of the flour incorporated in there. Because eventually the texture we want is something that's, not too sticky and not too dry. And, how to explain that when you can't feel it yourself is a bit of a problem. Right now it's a little sticky. You can see that this is a shaggy dough. As you can, you can tell by looking, it looks shaggy. I'm going to kind of open that up, stuff some flour in, and kind of start just working that in. So kind of leaning over uncomfortably so that you can see this on the camera. Once we're starting to get this all incorporated, the thing is, right now it's feeling a little dry, but that's because I've barely started kneading it and the flour hasn't had a chance to hydrate yet. So as I knead this, it's going to feel more a little more wet, a little more smooth. And it's also very dry in my kitchen because it's been cold, so the heat's been on, and the heat on makes it all dry in here. So right now I'm thinking I will probably not need to add more flour to this. In this case, 3.5 cups is plenty. And you want to, start with the, you want to work your way up with the flour because it's easier to add more flour than it is to add more liquid. If this was real bad, I'd have to find a way to add some more water in. All right. Be able to see my clock since I want to knead this for about 7 minutes. It is my usual, but it's starting to feel a little more smooth, a little more elastic. The outside still feels kind of dry, but not as much as it had been. So yeah, this stage is you're getting it all mixed nicely, you're getting the flour hydrated, and you're working the gluten in the flour. I don't know what you do for gluten-free. I've never made a gluten-free bread. I'm sure there are plenty of recipes on the internet with people who know what they're doing. I know how to do this. But yeah, this is starting to feel more like it ought to. It's feeling elastic. It's feeling, it doesn't have that shaggy appearance anymore. It's coming together a little more smoothly. So what we want, ideally, is for it to end up looking nice and smooth. And feeling not dry to the touch, but not sticky either. And this is one of those things that you just kind of need to learn by doing to get the right feel for it. I've been doing this for a while. It's even starting to feel just a little sticky again. But not so much that I want to add more flour yet. And of course, you don't need to do this in the bowl. I just like to. As long as it's getting worked. It's good. You want to give it squishes, you want to give it pulls, you want to give it folds. I think I'm just going to cut here because I don't have anything more interesting to say, and I've got another 3 or 4 minutes of this to do. So I'll be back in a minute. All right, that's been about 7 minutes. So I'm going to kind of pick this up and kind of smooth it until it's a nice little ball, and kind of just gather up all this on the bottom so it's got a nice smooth top. Now, you're doing this the exact right way. You're going to get a nice clean bowl, and you're going to oil it, and you're going to oil the top of your bread, and you're going to leave it somewhere nice and warm to rise. But I'm going to just put it right back in its bowl. It's a dirty, dirty bowl. I'm going to throw a tea towel over this, and I'm going to leave it for 15-20 minutes until it's doubled in size. So we'll be back then. All right, it's been about 15-20 minutes, and this has doubled in size. So give that a little. There we go. So you know that's done. And it feels all nice. All right, so let me get this out of the way. Flour down so it doesn't stick quite as much to the cutting board. And also off screen, I buttered up a 9x12. Now it's bread, you can put it in basically anything, but I'm going to be making buns. So that's there. So I've got my bread all nicely up, and now I want to turn this into, let's say, 16 buns. Normally I will make 32, which actually makes very tiny ones, like golf ball sized. But often when I'm making buns, I'm doing it for like finger food potluck style. So 4, there's 8, and then take these apart, kind of roll them up. And each one of these I'm going to chop into 2 pieces, and that'll give me my 16. Are they all going to be the correct size? Like, are they all going to be the same size? No. I have never been able to get these to be the correct size. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to kind of fold it over so it's got the smooth top and the little pinch bottom. And I'm going to put them in my buttered dish over here, which I will show you once I'm done. So again, take it, fold it out, pinch the bottom. And I don't want to pack them too tightly into my dish because these are going to need a second rise. Right, I'm just going to cut to when I have all these done, since I expect you get the idea. Take, fold, pinch, nice and smooth on top, put it in the tray. Alright, our second rise is done. And the buns are a little bigger. Now their sides are touching. Now before I'm going to put them in, I'm going to give them a bit of a wash. Now you could use an egg wash, that's typical, which is just an egg beaten with a little water, but I'm going to use butter. It adds a little flavor and it makes the tops brown up a little nicer. And you can also just use water if you don't really have anything else, but I tend to prefer using butter. Alright, and now we are finally at the last step. Now we get to bake these. So I'm going to pop these into the oven for 15 minutes. Until the tops are nicely browned. Alright, and there we go. The only problem now is that we have one more bit of waiting, and that's for the bread to come down to room temperature, because there is the unfortunate problem of bread or other baked goods that if you take a piece off when it's still warm, all the steam is going to come out and make the rest of it all very dry. But at least the actual process is done, and I only need to wait for this to cool. Until next time.